Hi, I'm Dallas, owner of Lower Gear, and as you can see on the table here in front of us, today we're going to talk a little bit about shoes. What we carry here at our store are limited to hiking and backpacking lines. We have several different brands that we carry, but whether you're buying from us or elsewhere, here's a few good pointers for you in making your selection. One of the first criteria that you're going to want to choose on is whether you want the mids or the low cuts. And I have some of each here in front of me. This is two models here from Oboz, which is a brand we've carried for the last 9 or 10 years. This is referred to as a mid, and this is a low cut. Track shoes, running shoes tend to be a little bit lower than a hiking low, and hunting boots will be a little bit higher on the calf than a normal hiking or backpacking boot. You can see a little bit of difference here. This one is a little bit higher, so it may vary a ½ inch or an inch or so depending on the brand that you choose. Women's models also come in mids and lows, but here is a mid compared, this is also Oboz, and this is a women's mid compared to a men's mid, so you'll see the differences there, obvious ones. In addition to whether they are a low cut or mid, there is also obviously the size, which we're going to get into on how to read a Brannock device, which is helpful for that, and also the volume of a shoe. You'll hear that referred to from time to time, and that is normally referring to the height inside the shoe. Some of them are going to be, if you have a really high arch, for example, you might be better off with a high volume shoe. If you have flat feet, which typically as the years go by, your feet do get flatter and flatter, which means you can get away with a lower volume shoe, and you'll probably also need a longer shoe as the decades go by. Construction on all the shoes, you're going to have the sole, and they're going to have a variety of different treads on them. I wouldn't worry too much about that. That's a fairly nuanced kind of thing that most people, most of the time, are never going to be able to tell the difference between various styles of tread, although the durability of these comes into play. There's also a midsole, which is this section right in here. This is, on this particular one, it's a EVA, is a common material, and that's why you don't see many shoes made in the U.S., because the manufacturing process of EVA is prohibited here in the U.S. Most of these are made in Asia, although the designs may be here. You'll find different degrees of leather versus synthetic materials on this. Some of them will have a waterproof liner. Gore-Tex is the most common name, but there's no particular advantage of it over other brands who have their own proprietary styles of waterproofness. There is some discussion that a waterproof liner makes it hotter. That is true at some temperature ranges, but out here in Arizona, once it gets to a certain temperature outside, it just doesn't make any difference. You're not going to tell much difference between a waterproof or a non-waterproof version. The ones that we carry, almost all of our low cuts are non-waterproof, because we don't deal with much dew and grass moisture out here, so there's not much point in having a waterproof low cut here in the Southwest. Most of the mids that we have are waterproof because that's the most popular design that the manufacturers come up with. There's not much of a worldwide market for mids that aren't waterproof. Another consideration on whether to go with a mid or a low cut has to do with its intended purpose when you're out on the trail. Everything else being equal, we normally recommend the mids over the low cut ones, particularly out here in Arizona, because there's a lot of gotcha things out on the trail. Certainly some degree rattlesnakes, but more commonly the jumping cholla or the pointy ends of yucca plants. you have a little bit more protection with the mids than you do with the low cuts. Now, some people can't stand the idea of this touching their ankles, but it is something that you tend to get used to. As long as it goes over your ankle, it's not halfway up, then typically you won't have much of an issue with the mid. The mids are going to be a couple ounces heavier than the low cuts, but it's not much these days. And these tend to be maybe $35 or $40 more expensive model to model within a brand over the low cuts. There's also the question of ankle support. A lot of guys in particular come in and say, well, I've never had any twisted ankles or anything, and neither has anybody else until the first time it happens. And once it's happened, your ankles can get a little weak with that, and if you want to prevent ankle roll, then go with the mid. If you're 50 feet away from your car and you twist your ankle, it's one thing, but if you're 20 miles away from the nearest trailhead exit, then you'll be glad to have the additional protection of a mid-height boot. Another question that comes up frequently is someone will come into the store and ask, what's your best shoe? And the unfortunate short answer to that, there is no such thing. The best thing for me could be the worst for you, and vice versa, because everybody's feet are different. There can, however, be an answer to which shoes have the higher quality, and that will often tie into the price. So you can go to some of the big box stores and you'll see an advertised sales price of $29 for a hiking boot. Most of our mids are going to be in the $150 to $160 range around now, and they'll go up into the $200 range, sometimes more. The least expensive ones are going to be right around $100 or so. And what you get as you go up into the price range is typically going to have more durability, and the most governing thing when you make a shoe buying decision is comfort. Some of the things as far as durability to look for, you can check to some degree online, but always take online reviews with a grain of salt, because most people that review online have a problem. You could have 10,000 people had a satisfactory experience, a dozen or so have a bad one. Those dozen or so are much more likely to say something bad about a product. To see for yourself, look for some of the quality of the stitching. For example, this one doesn't have the metal eyelets like this one does, and sometimes these will last a little bit longer, these little eyelets right there. Look for toe guard protection, so when you stub your toe, these are helpful. The depth of the sole comes into play. It's going to vary, and you'll see a lot of people twisting these around, and there is a role for that. So this is an Oboz pair, and this is a Columbia pair. It is much easier to twist these around than it is these. So these are going to be more comfortable right out of the box. These are going to be a lot more durable over the long haul. When you first get in something like this, you're going to feel a little bit of clumsiness when you first walk in them, but you'll soon break into that. And part of this isn't that it's the shoe breaking in, it is your foot breaking into the design of the shoe, particularly as it relates to your arch. So when you hop into a new pair of shoes, you'll often feel like, Jesus, I almost got golf balls in there. That sensation goes away pretty quick. But you don't want to buy a pair of shoes that have anything particularly pinching you. And definitely if you're feeling like if a 10 is a little too small, a 10.5 is a little too big, always go with the 10.5, because you can always lace that excess out or wear a different pair of socks, but you cannot really expand the 10 to feel comfortable. So always go with size up. If you can, always shop for shoes late in the afternoon, because your feet will expand over the course of the day. And even better still, if you can go for a hike and then come in and shop for shoes, that would be the most realistic time to get a good feeling pair of shoes. The most important consideration when you're buying shoes after you've decided what style is going to work for you is, of course, find something that fits correctly, and it can be all over the place. Hiking boots tend to fit differently than casual and dress shoes, but with anything, this is something that's been around for a long time, sort of old school kind of approach to a proper shoe fitting, but it does still work. It's a good sanity check to see how what might be the best shoe for you size-wise, and it actually does work. Ultimately, it's the comfort on the foot that counts, but I'm going to show you how, if you're at a good store, and you won't run into this too much at the big box stores, they're not going to have time to do this, but at a smaller shop like ours, be looking for something like this so you can really fine-tune your fit, and we'll show you how this works. So you can see it's marked left and right, and this part is a measurement for the width of your foot, and I'll explain what this part does here. So I'm going to put my right foot down, and I'm going to put my weight on it, and when we look at the length, we see that by lengthwise, based on this, I'm a 9.5, but since I am touching it, I would probably tell someone to take a look at a 10 based on length. However, that's not the only measurement that we want to consider. This, I'm going to line up, it's slightly curved here, and this goes to the widest part of your foot. And you'll see now that this is marked at 11. And this is designed to be where your foot breaks. And this needs to match up with that particular type of shoe. You always take the one that's the biggest. So even though on this I'm a 9.5, I wear size 11s because it's important that my foot match up with where the shoe breaks. What this means is my toes are short relative to the rest of my foot, and this is a very common thing among men. What we've learned over the years is that women tend to be fairly concordant, that they'll come out with a 8 here and an 8 here. A lot of men will be 9, 10, or 11 here and be a full size bigger on this side. And so a lot of people thought they had a wide foot, actually just needed a longer shoe. This will also tell you the length, and you can look here, and I have a pretty average width right in around about a C. So the last piece inside the shoe that's part of the comfort and the fit that comes into play are the inserts. A sort of dirty little secret in the shoe business is you could have a $200 very nice pair of boots, but the insert, the foot insert that goes inside of it, might be worth $1. So what a lot of people don't do that they should is swap these out with greater frequency than they do. So your pair of shoes might last 600 miles, but during the course of that time, you should replace these at least 3 or 4 times. When you first put on a pair of new shoes, if you go to the store, and almost everybody always sees, oh wow, that's a whole lot more comfortable than these old shoes I just had. A lot of what you're feeling is the insert. There's a couple of options you have if you have poor inserts in a new pair of boots, and that is to get an aftermarket. The most common one probably in the aftermarket world is Superfeet. We actually use a little bit different brand, but it's the same concept. These will tend to have a greater arch support in them and sometimes a little more cushion. There are some exceptions. We have found over the years that oboes, that the insert that comes with that is as good as the aftermarket ones. And then in the case of Trexta, they're totally different. So if you can look at the difference in the structure here, you'll see that this one actually looks like a foot, and this one looks like more like a mannequin's foot. So regardless of what you do, just always keep in mind to get these swapped out more frequently, like I said, 100, 150 miles depending on your weight and a few other factors, and that will extend the functional lifetime of your hiking boots. While certainly the boots are the most important part of the protection of your feet and the comfort, don't underestimate the importance of the sock. The number one mistake that you don't want to make when you're picking a pair of socks is do not choose anything with cotton in it. Cotton does not wick water well, and so it can create a very attractive environment for blisters. Around here, particularly in Arizona, what we recommend is something with a merino wool blend, sometimes called smart wool. That's just the brand name. But it is a merino wool. Most of it is in the 70-75% range, and then the balance of that's going to be some blend of synthetics. We carry 3 different brands here. You have a wide selection of choices. When you are looking at the socks, you have 2 choices in sizes. So this is called a quarter sock, and it's going to come just right at the ankle. And this is called a crew, and this one's going to come up several inches higher, as you can see. If you have high boots, then you're going to want a crew, and the other advantage of a crew is that it helps keep dust out. The quarters are going to be a little bit cooler, and they're perfectly fine for a low-cut shoe, and even some mids that these will work. But it's whatever is more comfortable. Price-wise, they're all going to be the same. Expect to spend about $20 a pair for a good quality shoe, sock rather, and but almost all of these have a lifetime guarantee. So don't sell yourself short when you're getting your foot system together for out hiking in the backcountry. Always pick a good pair of socks to go along with your new shoes. I hope you found this sort of shoe 101 helpful for you. When it comes time for your next pair of backpacking or hiking shoes, come on down to see us. We're conveniently located at the southwest corner of University and 101 in Tempe, or give us a call at 480-348-8917.